time, no tide can heal a loss is profound.
Part 6 of the album is really Jason Lingle's baby. Something of a piano quartet with some dark jazz and a modern classical harmony involved. I really should let him discuss this, but you know, it's a short part on the record, but it's vital for the transition into the epic stuff that follows.
When I wrote the music for The Memory of Bleeding, it was a really stressful time for me. I was going through a lot of emotions, and you know, there are parts of the album that the group maniacally focused on every note. There were very technical parts that we all wanted to get perfect, make sure that it grooved. But that particular part of the album I wrote in an afternoon, and it just literally flowed out. I hit the record button in Logic here in my studio and just played. And you can really hear in the piano in the beginning the fragile state of it almost sounds like depression, but as the piece goes through, you can hear the symphony come in and the orchestration really picks up and feels hopeful, and the part just builds until it climaxes beautifully into Souls in Permafrost, which is my favorite part of the album.
You know, this is kind of the first opportunity Jason and I have had to collaborate post the 1996 Altura days. So I was really glad to hear when he brought his contributions to the table. More importantly, for those contributions to kind of fit Tom's vision of what we were hoping to achieve. That song, albeit very different in the scope of what Sa is, I call it necessary, and once again, collaborating with Jason and writing melodies for Jason's parts, it took me back, you know, 18 years.
The highest of hopes left impossible depths of darkness and pain and deeper regrets, facing a future of paradise lost into my soul in permafrost.
Part 7 of Sa begins with a classic Mark Zonder moment. This is a beat or a variation on a beat that I think is one of his signatures, and I believe it was appropriated by Portnoy at one point as well. But nevertheless, that yields to complete and utter madness. I mean, there's so much counterpoint and so many parts moving in every direction simultaneously. It's very difficult to keep track of, but ultimately it comes across to me like in the spirit of early Fate's Warning. Maybe not so much as our To Wander the Void did, but it's the vocal melodies and that driving triplet feel again, the syncopations and so forth. I think you'll be hearing a lot more of this one in particular.
Souls in Permafrost, man, I felt like I got a chance to come back home with that song. With this album having such a vast array of vocal approaches and vocal styles, you know, that one's in my wheelhouse. I felt like I got a chance to kind of flex my metal vocal muscle, if you will, on that song. So as we wrote it and as we developed the melodies, it brought me a lot of comfort because you know, whereas While Heaven Wept wants to take you many different places, we still like to go back to the bread and butter of what I think metal fans like, and that's aggression and power and attitude, man. And that song is littered with all of the aforementioned things. It's definitely one of the highlights for me, I think, vocally on Suspended At Aphelion, and I really can't wait for you guys to hear that. It's gonna move you.
Traversing the nothingness of a broken night, searching the stars, I still dream of your light. I remember the oceans that raged.
So with part 8, Searching the Stars, it's in and out, but you know, I'm going to call that the blind guardian part of Suspended At Aphelion. The way Tom and I approached those melodies, and I think delivered the vocals ultimately, the harmonies that were written, just the actual melodic approach, it's reminiscent of Blind Guardian, if you will. So it's one more aspect of something to this record that, you know, it's going to be hard to peg one thing or another, but you're going to get taste of certain things. And as far as part 8 is concerned, I hope you like Blind Guardian.
Part 8 of Saw is a short passage that weaves through several rhythmic changes and key changes, ultimately creating the feel of a finale of sorts, especially considering the poignancy of the lyrics. However, there's certainly more to come.
Strangers once and strangers again.
So with part 9, Reminiscence of Strangers, I just remember that coming to me after a long weekend of pre-production work with Tom. We had done a lot over the course of a couple days, but by the time Sunday morning rolled around, he was about to head back to Northern Virginia, and we were both, as I mentioned, spent, but we decided to take a stab at an early Sunday morning attempt to come up with something that would stick. And Reminiscence of Strangers, albeit only a couple of lines within that part, came to me easily that morning, and the way that it was delivered and the way that we meant to capture it in the studio was that we wanted the listener to not only imagine that we were speaking directly to the listener, but that we were in the ear, physically in the ear of the listener saying that. So you'll hear the way that was captured. It's incredibly intimate, but it is the beginning of the finale, so you can just tell that the pot is beginning to be stirred because bigger and better things are coming. So I really, really like that part, and I really think that it lends to a very strong ending.
Part 9 is a very stark, dry, and intimate piece. Very understated vocal delivery, but it's so poignant. It's one of my favorite parts on the record. Comes across very much like a Fish-era Marillion song, something of that nature, before it builds into the classic WHILE HEAVEN WEPT type finale. And in fact, there was a point where it was so much like Furthest Shore, we really had to revisit that, even after Mark had tracked the drums for the original version. But we'll talk more about that when I get to part 10. One thing I should have mentioned when I was talking about part 9 was that was the first appearance of co-founder and original guitarist Victor Arduini on Suspended At Aphelion. And he created one of the most epic guitar solos that he's ever done, according to him. And it is pretty damn epic. It's the bridge between 9 and 10, really. And, you know, I actually had the honor of trading some licks back and forth with him throughout the course of that. It's definitely one of my personal highlights in WHILE HEAVEN WEPT history. Another interesting thing about part 10 is, as I mentioned before, Mark had actually tracked the drums for the original arrangement. But after I'd listened through the rest of the album, I just didn't feel like it was cutting it. I mean, it was classic WHW, totally in the vein of Furthest Shore or something like this. It would have been passable, but I just didn't think that it was worthy of his caliber of playing. So, in a bit of a Hail Mary move, I spent 36 hours straight channeling whatever I could. And this maze of key changes is the result of that, and it's in my opinion, a much stronger finale.
We are knee-deep in the finale of the record, and the word that comes to mind when I think about Lifelines Lost is dynamic. It's an incredibly dynamic piece, one that was rewritten basically in the 11th hour of the pre-production process. Something that I'm really glad Tom examined, as he often does, and rewrote to make it better than it was prior to that being done. You know, it's my hopes that by the time the listener gets here, they are emotionally, physically, spiritually, and even intellectually invested, because that was our aim from the beginning of this project to the end. Matter of fact, that's our aim with about everything that this band does. But, you know, if I was a betting man, we would have you hooked by the end of this record. So enjoy.
Part 11 is both the end of our journey through Saw, as well as a recapitulation of a chord progression that we heard earlier in the album. This time somberly stated by a cello choir, and it's all marked by those last 3 bowings that yield this sense of acceptance, but yet it's a bittersweet acceptance.